Masechet Nazir Daf Yud Dalid. We're talking about a case of a bifurcated Nazirut, where someone takes upon himself two periods of Nazirut. So I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a son. Also, I want to be a Nazir from now, regular Nazir. And in that case, as we saw in the Mishnah, he begins his regular Nazirut because he doesn't know if and when a son will be born to him. So he starts off, and let's say he does 20 days of his regular Nazirut. And then a son is born. The halacha is he pauses that one, he keeps it on 20, pause, and then he starts the Nazirut for the child, completes that 30 days, and then goes back to counting 10 more days for the regular Nazirut. So he is the Nazir the whole time, continuously, but it's broken up. Now, here's the question. Nitma bime beno. What if he becomes tameh lamet in the middle of the Nazirut for his son? If any Nazir becomes tameh lamet, that breaks his count. Other things, like if he drinks wine by mistake, that does not break his count. He's not allowed, and he gets lashes, but it doesn't break his count. But if it becomes tameh lamet, then it undoes it. So he did 20 days, he was fine. He started off the 30 days, and let's say he got 5 days into that. It was out now at day number 25 altogether. Well, surely if it becomes tameh lamet, it will break those 5 days of the Nazirut for his son. That everybody agrees to. The question is, does it also break the first 20 days and cancel those out? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter, he says, yes, it does. Resh Lakish Amar Eno Soter. Resh Lakish says, no, the 20 days is kept intact. Becoming tameh lamet during the middle period only breaks the Nazirut for the son. What's their reasoning? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter, Chada Nazirut Arichtahi. Rabbi Yochanan says it does break it because this is all one long Nazirut period. Although you're right, it is for two different vows, but he's a Nazir without stopping the entire time. He does 20 days, he goes right into the next 30 days. As we saw yesterday, he doesn't even shave his hair or bring korbanot after that 30 days. He goes immediately to finish the 20 days, and then shaves and brings both sets of korbanot at the end. So you see, he's a Nazir the whole time, and therefore it's similar to one period of Nazirut, even though it's for two different vows, and therefore when he becomes tameh lamet in the middle of the second vow, it breaks those 5 days and the 20 days before. That guy, after he becomes tahor, he'll have to do the Nazirut for his son, full 30 days, and then Nazirut for his regular vow, full 30 days all over again. However, Resh Lakish Amar Eno Soter, Nazirut ideh lechud u'vedibreh lechud. Resh Lakish says, no, these are two different periods of Nazirut, even though they're back-to-back, actually they're bifurcated, A, B, A. Nevertheless, his own Nazirut for himself is one thing, and the Nazirut for his son is another matter. He became tamet during the Nazirut of his son. Only the days of Nazirut for his son become nullified. Those 20 days he has stored up. They're in the bank. And once you put something on pause, it remains in a separate realm, and becoming tameh lamet does not affect it. Okay, very interesting. And now we're going to see a similar case where they also argue. Nitma bime sara'ato. Now we have not a bifurcate, just a regular plain old Nazir. He says, I'm going to be a Nazir for 30 days. Good. And then 20 days into it, he becomes tameh sara'at. Tameh sara'at is different from tameh lamet. Only tum'at met will break the days of a mesorah. If someone becomes tameh because of sara'at, then it does not break the days he had before, but those days that he's tameh do not count. So if he's tameh because of sarat for 10 days, so he observed 20 days, those 10 days when he's a mesorah do not count. When he becomes tahor, then he can go ahead and continue the last 10 days that he needs for his sarat. Okay, for his nazir. Now, everyone agrees to that. Here is the question. What if while he was tameh as a mesorah, he also became tameh lamet? Now what do you do? Rabbi Yochanan amar soter, Resh Lakish amar eno soter. So once it becomes tameh mesora, and while he's tameh mesora, becomes tameh lamet, Rabbi Yochanan says that will break the previous days of Nazir that he had. Resh Lakish says, no, it does not break. Why? Rabbi Yochanan amar soter deha benizirut ka'eh. Rabbi Yochanan says it breaks it because he's still in the nizirut period. And so, therefore, even though he did his 20 days, he was just fine. He became Mesorah. So even though we pause the counting of the days of Nazirut, just because it's paused doesn't mean he's not a Nazir, right? We pause it. He's a Mesorah right now, but he's still within a Nazirut period. And so it will break those days. Whereas Shakish Amar eno soter salat echud and zurut echud. Shakish, similar to what we said before, says that when you press pause, so you put those in the bank, they're in a separate realm. Now you're no longer in the Nazirut period, you're in a Mesorah period. Separate thing. If it so happens that while you're Mesorah became Tameh Lamet, that Tumat Met happened during Salat period, not while you were Nazir. When you put it on pause, it's a completely different story. To give an analogy, if there's a rule, if one football player punches another football player during a game, he gets kicked out of the league. All right, we understand that. If he punches him when they're not playing a game, on just a regular Tuesday out in the street, then the league doesn't get involved, call the police, he doesn't get kicked out of the game. Okay, here's the question. What if one player punches another during halftime? They're not playing the game is on pause. So there, Rabbi Yochanan would say, doesn't matter, it's still during the game. Just because the game is paused and you're not playing this second, it's still within the time period of the game, and therefore he get kicked out of the league. Whereas Shakish would say, if one player punches another during halftime, then you're not playing the game. That's they went into the locker room, they're doing their own thing. This is not called during the game. The game's on pause. It's the same as before or after the game, and will not get kicked out of the league. So that's an analogy to understand the idea. All right, so now we just saw two cases where they have the same machloket. Why do we need both? Isn't it basically the same principle? So we say, utzricha, we do need both. Mar behach kamaita, behi amar Yochanan soter, shem nizirut achat hi, aval beha ema modeh leresh shakish, nazir lechud v'sarat lechud. If we only had the first case of the bifurcated nazir, where he was nazir for himself and for his son, and then back for himself, so I would say over there, Rabbi Yochanan says, when it becomes Tameh Met during the middle Nazirut period, that breaks it because he is a Nazir the whole time. He's a Nazir for vow 1 and then a Nazir for vow 2, but it's still one long, he's in Nazirut status the entire time. So I would say there, Rabbi Yochanan says it breaks, but maybe if I only had that case, I would say regarding the Mesorah, maybe Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Resh Lakish, since he was a Nazir, now he's no longer a Nazir, because we paused it, he's now a Mesorah. So he's not, these are two different things. Nazir and Mesorah are two different statuses. And that's why we need this case also, the second Mesorah. Rabbi Yochanan thinks that he can be a Nazir and Mesorah. You can be a football player in a game, even during the halftime. You're still a football player in the game. You could be a Mesorah, even though you're not counting the days of Nazir. You're still in the middle of the Nazirut period and have a Nazir status. Okay, V'itmar beha, and if we only had the case of the Mesorah, Pakama Resh Lakish, I would say Resh Lakish only says that it doesn't break in the case of Mesorah, because it's two different statuses. He was Nazir, now he's Mesorah. That's called a different status, so it becomes Tameh Lamet. That's why it does not break. But if I had only that case, I might think that in the case of the bifurcated Nazir, where he's a Nazir the whole time, maybe Resh Lakish would agree with Rabbi Yochanan that since he's still called a Nazir, it does break it. Siricha, that's why I need both to teach me that they would argue with each other. In fact, in both cases. Okay. Now we have yet another case, that's a variation. Nitma beyom gidul se'ar. Okay, yom gidul se'ar, at least according to one interpretation, you see here, means that a person has to fill out days in order to continue to grow his hair. For example, he became he was a regular Nazir. He became tameh a misora in the middle of it, right after 20 days, and now so he goes through the misora period. He becomes tahor. Part of the purification ritual for misora is he has to shave his hair. So now he shaved his hair. All right. Now he continues counting. Oh, just 10 more days. The problem is, after 10 more days, he only has 10 days worth of hair, which is not sufficient for him to cut it to do the Nazir purification, Nazir ending ritual. So, he has to wait another 20 days while he waits for his hair to grow so that he can cut his hair, and he offers it together with the sacrifices. So those are days of Gidul Se'ar. And there's a question, what do we consider these days? Is he still just continues to be a Nazir, or is it not a Nazir? That's a machloket between Rav and Shemuel. Rav is going to say it's a different status. He's not a Nazir during this period. Therefore, if a person becomes tameh lamet during that waiting period, in my case 20 days, when he's waiting for his hair to grow, Rav Amad enos soter, it will not break the days that he counted. He did 30 days. He did the 20. He became tameh mesora. He did another 10. He finished his nizirut. Check. Now he's just waiting for his hair to grow. If he becomes tameh lamet, he does not have to start all over again. He just becomes tahor, and then he can cut his hair and bring the sacrifices. And we add, afilu Rabbi Yochanan damar soter hanemi lehecha deka b'nezirut gidul saram b'shla nezirut hu. And even Rabbi Yochanan would agree to this. Rabbi Yochanan who says that if you become tameh in the middle, even during a pause, it does break. That's only when he actually is a Nazir of one kind or another, Nazir and a Mesorah, Nazir of a different vow, though he's still a Nazir. But the waiting for your hair to grow period, that the Nazirut finished, and therefore it became Tameh after the Nazirut period finished, and it does not break. That's the opinion of Rav. However, Shemuel disagrees. Shemuel Amar soter. Afilu l'Resh Lakish damar en soter hatam shete nezirot hacha chada neziruta. Shemuel says that period while you're waiting for your hair to grow, you're still a Nazir until you do the concluding ceremony. You're still a Nazir, and therefore, if you become tameh lamet during that waiting period, it does break and you have to start all over again. And not only Rabbi Yochanan would say that, even Resh Lakish, who in the previous two cases said it does not break, that's because over there you were a Nazir it was two different Nazir periods, so it only breaks the Nazir period that you're in. Or you were not a Nazir, you were a Mesorah. But here, it's one long Nazirut, according to Shemuel, until you shave and bring your sacrifices, you're still a regular Nazir, and you have to start all over again. All right, fascinating. Amar Rav Chisda, Hakol modim she'im kadash se'ar badam en lo takana. The usual order when a Nazir is finished is that on that last day, when he finishes counting, he cuts his hair. His hair is kodesh all the time that it's on his head. So that's why it means here im kadash. So while the hair is on his head kodesh, usually he's supposed to cut his hair, bring the korbanot, and do the whole ceremony, and then he's finished. The problem here is that him kadash se'ar badam. The hair was still holy, meaning it was still on his head. Badam means while the blood of the sacrifices was offered. And, it doesn't say here, but we're inserting, and he became tameh lamet before he got a haircut. So here's the problem. He brought his sacrifices, and then he became tameh lamet. And now he can no longer cut his hair. And he has no way of getting out of his nizirut. Why? Because cutting of the hair has to be done when he's tahor. So because he's tameh, he can't cut his hair. Now, he can't cut his hair on this day until it becomes tahor again. The problem is he already brought the sacrifices, and you can't bring another set of sacrifices for the same nizirut. You already brought the sacrifices. So now he's stuck as a nazir forever. He can never complete his ceremony. So he became tameh lamed just right at the exact wrong time. He's really stuck. Okay, now we ask Alibad Deman, Rav Chisda, who says this statement, which Tana is he following? There's a machloket between Tanaim about whether cutting the hair is indispensable or you're supposed to do it, but b'diavad, if you didn't do it, it's okay. If you're talking about Rabbi Eliezer, since he says that shaving is indispensable and you can't complete without it, well, in that case, he's still fully a Nazir, even though he brought his sacrifices. He's still fully a Nazir until he cuts his hair. Therefore, since he became Tameh Lamet, while he's fully a Nazir, it should break all of his days. He has to go all the way back to the beginning and count them all again. So he should be able to do that. It's a pain. He has to do it all again, but he should be able to do that and complete it. And then the sacrifice that he brought before the end, because he didn't count any days, turns out, at that time. So then, yes, he'll do it again, bring sacrifices, cut his hair, and he has a way out. He has a remedy. If you're talking about Rabbanan, they say that cutting the hair b'di avad, it's okay. It's not indispensable. So therefore, even though he didn't cut his hair, he finished his nizirut. He brought the sacrifices, and he's good to go. And so, what do you mean he has no remedy? So we answer, it is Rabbanan. When we say he has no remedy, that doesn't mean he's stuck to be a Nazir forever. It means he has no remedy to do the mitzvah of shaving. He can't shave. Not going to help him if he shaves in another week. He's no longer a Nazir, precisely because he's no longer a Nazir. That's it. He goes home and he can't fulfill that mitzvah anymore. All right. Amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Nazir shekalu lo yamav, loke al hatuma, veno loke al hatiglachat, velo al hayayin. We're now continuing the theme of what happens if something goes wrong all the way on the very last day. So a Nazir, he finished his days, he's ready for his purification, and all of a sudden becomes Tameh Lamet. He's not allowed to become Tameh Lamet on that day, and if he does, he gets lashes. However, he will not get lashes if he shaves and not for wine. Now, regarding the shaving, he is going to shave that day, but he has to do it when he brings the sacrifices. And so, if he does it before he brings the sacrifices, he's not allowed to. No lashes, but he's not allowed to yet. Also, he's not allowed to drink wine that day. If he does, no lashes, because the days are already over. He counted his last day, but there's only a prohibition and not lashes for that. We ask, why? What's the difference? What's your source? That he does get lashes for Tumah Lamet. Tamar kera kol yemei haziro laHashem lerabot yamim shelachar melot kayamim shelifnei melot. Since the pasuk says all the days of that he is a Nazir, and the rest of the pasuk is he cannot become Tameh Lamet. So since it says all the days, obviously while he's a Nazir, but includes even the days after the last day, or if he doesn't complete it, then he goes on and has more days. He is also not allowed to become Tameh Lamet, and he would get lashes if he did. All right, that's the source from this Kol Yemeh. However, here's the problem. Kol Yemeh neder nizero ta'ar lo yavol al rosho lasot yamim shelacha melot kaimim shelifnei melot. If so, then it should be the same law for shaving, because the pasuk also says regarding shaving, all the days of his vow of Nazirut, a razor should not pass on his head. So the call means that we're going to add the days after the completion, just like the days before the completion. So it should be the same law. Since it says call, he should get lashes for that too. And furthermore, v'tu, kol yemei nizro mikol asher yaseh migefen hayayin lasot yamim shelacha melot kaimim shelifnei melot. The pasuk also says regarding drinking wine, all the days that he's a Nazir, he has to stay away from anything that's made out of grapes. And that extra call comes to include the extra days after he completed his counting, just like the days before he completed his counting. And so really, there's no difference in the Pisukim. So we have an answer. Here's the full pasuk inside. We're talking about he becomes tameh lamet. It says v'timeh rosh nizro v'gilach rosho. So his head, the head of his nizirut status will become tameh, and that's why he has to shave, and so on. Okay, so we learn from that, since it says v'timeh rosh nizro, only misha nizro talui berosho, someone whose nizirut status depends only on his head, because he finished counting, and all he has to do now is bring his korbanot, shave his head. Because of that, because he finished his days, and since he finished his days, he has a special status. If he becomes tameh lamet, that's why he gets lashes. The Torah only uses this phrase, Rosh Nizro. He has a Nazir head in the context of becoming Tameh. And so therefore, someone who finished his days and is only waiting to cut his hair and do the sacrifices to finish it, only he, if he becomes Tameh, has to receives lashes, because in the regarding Tumah, it doesn't say this phrase Rosh Nizra in regards to the other prohibitions, so they are prohibited, but they do not receive lashes. Okay, so then right now we're saying that Tumat Met is the exception where he gets lashes, but actually now we're going to go back and say those other derivations that we just brought are actually good, because look at this baraita. Metibe Nazir shekalu lo yamav asur lagelech v'lishtot yain ve'litameh lametim v'imgelech v'shata yain ve'litmeh lametim areze sofeget arba'im tiyufta. Actually, according to this baraita, a Nazir who finished counting his days and he just didn't get around to bringing his sacrifices yet. So, and he's now continuing, right, a few more days, he still remains prohibited from shaving, or from drinking wine, or from becoming tameh lamet. And if he does any one of those things, he does get 40 lashes to yubta. So this baraita is a refutation of the halacha of Rabbi Yosef that we saw earlier. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen v'Amen.